Welcome to the video tutorial of the Bilingual Articulation and Phonology Assessment. My name is Barbara Fernandez. I am a bilingual speech-language pathologist and one of the creators of BAPA. My goal today is to show to some of you how to utilize the app. If you already own the app, this is a great way to get a general overview of how to utilize this application to take advantage of all its features. But if you don't already own the BAPA app, which is the latest, most advanced articulation assessment for bilingual and also monolingual students, this is a good way for you to know that this is a must on your device. To get started, as soon as you open the app, it's super easy to just add a student. You can do this prior to seeing that student that you're going to do the assessment, or you can do right before you see the child. You can save this if you're going to see the child next week, or you can do it immediately before. So I'm going to enter a name here. Then I'm going to select the date of birth. And now we have a couple options. We can do a Spanish-only test if it's a monolingual Spanish speaker. We can do an English-only test if it's a monolingual English speaker, or we can assess a bilingual student that speaks both English and Spanish. And that's where I am going to be doing this demo for you today. One cool thing that BAPA offers is the ability for you to select dialectal influences. We have several countries here of both Spain and Central and South American countries. I'm going to select here Venezuela, and I'm going to tap done. Now this child here that I just entered, turns out that he is 7 years and 0 months old. The app automatically calculated that for you. I want to show you some settings before you start your assessment. You see here there is a transition sound option, which gives the child some feedback. Things like, well done, great job, or muy bien if it's the Spanish section. You can also have options of voice feedback or tone. I'm going to leave it on the tone. It depends on the child. Voice recording type. We have two different types of voice recording as you're doing the assessment. You can do per word, meaning you will have access to each individual recording of each word. Or if you want to record just one large file of the whole assessment, you can do that as well. This is good if you're planning on transcribing this later, accessing that large file later. Display written word. You might want to give a cue to that child or turn off the written word. Here we have confidence interval of 90% or 95%. And I'm going to go back and enter and discuss the display errors in the other part after I've shown you the actual assessment. To get started, we tap on New Assessment, and we have two options. We have a Spanish language to start, or we have an English language to start. Even though we have the Spanish and the British flag here, this is just to represent the countries of origin of these languages. The test was standardized in the United States with bilingual students here in the United States. Now, if you're really unsure of how much exposure a child has to either of these languages, you can also choose both. And the test, after the first 8 exposures to different words, you can also discontinue. I'm going to do that, and I'm going to select Spanish as the first language. We know that sometimes we have children who come in and they're set to be bilingual, but when you actually come down to assess their articulation in language, you end up seeing that they don't have much Spanish. But because best practice tells us that we must at least attempt, you can select both and still attempt the Spanish language. And this is what we are going to do today.
Pan.
You tap on that word to hear the word pan. At the top, you have the transcription of that word. If you tap on the P, you're given Here are 5 different options to select. You have a substitution, a distortion, a deletion, backing, and assimilation. If you click on backing, let's say that student said kun or done. You tap on that T and you can see the word right in front of your eyes gets changed to what the child actually produced, as opposed to having to write that word. Moving on to the second word, let's say that the child said naño. You tap on that B and you can tap assimilation, and you're giving options. Naño. Now you have manos. Let's say the child produced it correctly. We move on to the next. Nido. You tap on that N and you can mark a deletion if it was ido. Dedo. Tap on that D and you can mark a distortion. You see it changed to orange. Toalla. You tap on that T, and I want to show you the coolest thing, which is the ability to select from basically any sound in the Spanish and English dialect inventory. So here, if it's voaya, or it could be moaya, you actually have the freedom to select any consonant when you tap on substitution. Now I'm going to swipe and show you that after we've presented 8 words to this child, if for some reason this child, every time you presented the image, despite a lot of prompting, the child was unable to name any word in Spanish, showing that even though this child has bilingual influences, they couldn't perform or continue the test in Spanish. So what we do is, the question here, is the child performing well enough in the language to continue? And the child in this case was not. We tap no, and when we swipe, we actually get moved to the English part of the assessment. And the English part works just like the Spanish. You saw that if it is a phonological process, most of the time, the sound will automatically switch. So if it's beehive, the child have beehive, you can tap on that devoicing and it changes to P. If it was a more complex change, you can tap on substitution. Now, one other different thing is when you have a cluster. When you have a cluster, for example, bridge, you can tap, if you said bridge or bidge, you would mark as a cluster reduction. But sometimes the child can do something like pridge or pwidge, which is a very different way of producing the word, but the app allows you that freedom to mark the errors as you see fit. As I scroll down the images, I want to show you the quality of these images. Highly identifiable images that were selected for this assessment. I'm going to swipe so we get to the end of the assessment. I will mark any errors. I just want to show you the images. At the end of the assessment, you are presented with multisyllabic word probes. And this is a correct, incorrect for the whole multisyllabic word probe. The child could have deleted an entire set of syllable or even half of the word. If they make any mistakes, you tap on the word and they become red. What we are telling the app is that whenever the syllables the word get more complex as far as syllable goes, the child has a breakdown. We've reached the end of the assessment and we can tap on results to adjust the overall intelligibility. I'm going to mark here 80, and I'm taking to the results of this child because this child ended up performing just like a monolingual English student. The results are completely in English. You can see here the results for bed, beehive, apple, and you can see the errors right next to it. Bed was devoiced. You had devoiced in beehive, substitution. Then on multisyllabic word probe, they're all incorrect. And we can take a look at the types of errors here. Syllable reduction, devoicing, and substitution. Obviously, this was a very random assessment for the purpose of this tutorial. Meanwhile, I do want to show you a student that has a complete assessment in both languages. I'm going to flip through a few here. The app does allow you an infinite amount of assessments of different students. And here we have a student who won that had both assessments completed. You have the date of administration, the age of the child when he was 5 years and 6 months. The language administered was English and Spanish. We completed. In English, it had a raw score of 135, a standard score of 101, confidence interval. And then Spanish, you see the comparison between the two languages. We can take a look at the preview results, and it compares both languages, English and Spanish. Here you have manner of articulation in Spanish and English. You can see voicing features for Spanish and English, as well as the specific errors in both languages, multisyllabic words, and the different errors depending on the language. My favorite feature is the magic it happens when we click Preview Report. And you get a complete report, which includes dialectal information for this child that was from Puerto Rico. So you have the dialectal influences of deletion of final S and other dialectal influences that should not be considered a speech error, but a dialect difference. And take a look at this 5-page report that you get immediately after the assessment. You can share this report via email, or you can print directly from your iPad. This is a standardized bilingual assessment of articulation and phonology that is available on the App Store for you to download today. You can search by the word BAPA or Bilingual Articulation and Phonology Assessment, or the company name Smarty Ears.